Hello everyone, I'm bringing you a video today looking at an iconic piece of East German kit or equipment, which is the M56 helmet as it's known to collectors. I don't have an early example of one of these, but I do have two examples, one relatively early and one later, the modified design. So I thought it would be worth having a look at these side by side, comparing them and talking a little bit about the design features and so forth, a little bit about the history of the helmet as well. But I thought it might be useful for those aspiring collectors who are looking at picking up East German kit. I think it's certainly a growing area of interest for many. This might be a useful reference to have a look at a couple, and there's a lot more information available online if you wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of these and how the design changed over time. But this is just a quick look at two examples, one relatively early and one later with the modified design of liner and so forth. So that's what we're going to have a look at now. So here we have the two examples of M56 helmet we're going to talk about. I think I mentioned at the start there should really be three I should be talking about. Really that should be four. I should have four helmets laid out here, or at least four available to talk about, but I'll explain the gaps in the collection in a minute and exactly what's missing from this run through of these. I'd like to find examples of both of those I'm missing. So if anyone has them and is willing to sell on, or surplus to your needs, you've got multiple of them, please do get in touch. I'd be interested to hear from you, obviously in a comment potentially, or you could email me at Rifleman Moore, that's Rifleman MOORE, or all lowercase at yahoo.com, excuse me, not yahoo.co.uk, yahoo.com. I'd certainly be interested to hear from you. But anyway, what we're talking about here are the sort of second example of the M56, which is not that different from the first examples. We'll talk about that in detail in just a moment. And then the M56 stroke 76, which is the modernized version of the helmet, which was introduced following refurbishments of these, which we'll get into in just a minute. So I'll move this one out of the way for the moment so we can have a look at the M56 on the left here first of all. And this is a fairly early example. The distinctive shape you can see here with the sort of the Germanic shape, but then it's sort of all just pulled out rather than having the sort of slope up into the traditional Stahlhelm shape that originates in the First World War, of course, and then became absolutely iconic during the Second World War. You've still got the lip and the rim here, that sort of neck curtain shape, but it's all just been pulled out into sort of this cone. And the origins of this shape go back to 1942, when a helmet was being considered for issue to the German army to replace the existing patterns of Stahlhelm. And this is actually a very good ballistic shape. Obviously, it's effectively sloped armour for the head, if you will. And ballistic tests have shown, as steel helmets go, these are very effective. But that never got off the ground. The story goes that Hitler didn't like the shape, thought it wasn't sort of emblematic of German troops, and there is something to that. It's not a very aesthetic shape, but it is a very practical shape. Now, some stories say that the stocks of these were made and then they were left over after the war, and that's what formed the initial batches of these. As far as I'm aware, that's totally untrue. It's sort of a fabrication. What is true is that the design principles and the design work was taken forward post-war and resulted in the M56, which we see here basically. These initially had a riveted liner, a liner that was riveted in place, and you can see here we have a rivet here, and a rivet at the rear. So two forward rivets and one at the rear. And if we flick this over, we can see the liner inside, which is very reminiscent of the German Second War liner. It hasn't really progressed much from that. Very, very similar indeed. We unfasten the chin strap here. You can see the details of how this is adjusted in. It's a leather liner, as you can see, ventilation holes in the various ears inside here, and it's adjusted in using this cord, which simply goes through eyelets in the leather. They are reinforced with a section of leather on the inside there. Hope you can see that. You've got a section of leather added in there to reinforce these. This particular example has a 57 stamped into there, which I understand to be the size. And then you can also see there's a marking inside the helmet here, and the 59 is the date of this. So this is a 59 dated M56, which has survived in remarkably good condition. It does have someone's name written in here. We have the initial here, KJ, the initials KJ, written in with ink pen on the liner. And then you can see here, sort of scratched into the paint there, you can see we have Johannes LS. Now, I'm not entirely sure Obviously the J would marry up with Johannes for a KJ inside the liner there. What the LS means, I do not know, but someone's written in the back of this anyway. You can see, the best way to do this is to try and get the light down in here. It's difficult, possibly better looking from this side. We see here, yeah, it's probably best looking in here. You can see there's a metal rim around here, or a metal, the liner is actually formed from a piece of metal which runs all the way around, which then has the sort of struts riveted to it, which you can see the rivet there. That then passes up inside the shell, and this rivet here passes through that section of metalwork inside to secure this in position. Oh, there we go. We can see down, if I get the light in there, you can see down between, there we go, between the ears of the liner there, the backside of that rivet holding the liner in place. And the same is true at the front. The metal rim is then spaced off the inside of the helmet with these rubber, these sort of foam rubber pads here, which are actually held in place with cord, as you can see in there. It's a little piece of cord there. And that spaces the metal rim of the liner off the helmet shell, and obviously gives bump protection, so that if your head's rattling around inside here, you've got that sort of crash protection of the rubber pads. And then the liner itself is riveted onto this metal section. You can see all the leather part of the liner that cushions your head is riveted all the way around the rim of the liner to keep it in place, as you can see. So fairly complicated liner to make, but let's say it works very, very well. You can see then we have bails for the chin strap riveted onto this metal rim of the liner as well. You can see these here. You can see the rivet down in there where these are attached on. And then the bails attach the 4 points of the chin strap, so 2 on each side. You can see there's basically a Y form for the chin strap on each side. And these can be adjusted in using a metal stud there, and there are keyholes worked into the leather that allow these to be adjusted in. At this time these are metal, and we'll see later they were changed to plastic. And you then have a simple buckle and strap with the smooth side of the leather going against the chin. That's the same on all the straps here. You can see it's smooth side in, rough side out, which is what you would expect. This is the side that rubs against the skin. You want the smooth side that side. And the 2 straps coming up from the liner on each side are riveted to this metal piece here, and then the strap going under the chin is riveted to that on this side, and on the other side with the buckle is riveted in place. And you can see it's a roller buckle there. We have a roller on there to make this easy to put the strap through and crank it in nice and tight under the chin. And you can see the back side of this is protected with a piece of leather on each side. These are commonly referred to as cheek pieces because they roughly sit on the cheeks when the strap is done up. The mark of a very early M56 is that the cheek pieces weren't on the original versions of these. So I would like to find one. Whether these have been added after the fact, not clear. It is possible. This being 59, probably not actually, but you can actually see these are sort of offcuts of leather. It's not even a neatly shaped piece of leather at this end. It's pointed. It's just been sort of roughly cut out to shape and stitched in place. There's no real need for it to be anything more than that. It just protects the face from this metalwork, from the contact of metalwork from the helmet. It's from the section where the chin strap comes together, from the 2 straps coming up from the liner, or coming down from the liner rather, to where you have the strap and buckle. So the earliest examples don't have these. I believe this feature was introduced in 1958. So the earliest examples you'll find out there don't have these pieces. I would like to find one. I'd be interested to have a very early M56 in the collection, but they are quite sought after and therefore quite expensive. So that's a quick run through the initial M56, and then the very small modification that was made, as we see here, in 1958. This particular helmet being dated 1959. So that's a fairly early M56 there, as you can see. Move this out of the way and I'll bring the M56 76 in. The major change with this was the introduction of a new liner, but the introduction of the new liner predates the M56 76 by many years. It was actually introduced with a helmet known as the M56/66, which was the helmet we've just looked at with the rivets, with the new liner installed. And what they did was they removed the rivets, they took the liner out, the liner we've just looked at in the previous helmet, and then they put blanking rivets into the holes. So from the outside, you still have the 3 rivets, but you have this newer design of liner inside, and that's the M56 76. Now, this liner is quite different. As you can see here, it's largely made of plastic. The metal has gone, and you have 2 large padded sections, front and rear, as you can see here, with yellow foam rubber used there, as you can see. This is the same sort of grade of foam sponge you'd expect to find in sort of kitchen sponges. It's very soft, but it does give enough, I think it's fair to say it does give enough sort of padding and cushioning for the head. You can see in here, this fits into the helmet with sort of studs or lugs inside the helmet, which the plastic liner clips onto. And you can see, if we look in here, the sections of plastic coming down from this crown piece then form the rim of the liner itself, and as you can see, that can be adjusted in using this toothed section here, much as you'd adjust in the liner of a hard hat or something like that. It's a very similar concept in that regard, and you can see there's a similar adjustment on this side as well. The plastic liner of this is very similar to a hard hat liner in that regard, and you can see again on this side we have the metal studs again there, which the plastic liner clips onto. So other than that, the liner is very similar. You do have a separate leather piece at the front, of course, because of the way this adjusts in on each side, but you still have the leather ears coming in to form the section where the head sits. You still adjust that in with a cord. These are still reinforced on the back with a leather washer to reinforce, as you can see, and the chin strap still basically functions in the same way. Although in this case, you now have, rather than the cheek protector being stitched on, the straps actually pass through it, as you can see. So it's just held in place by the straps passing through slots cut in the leather. You see that is the case on both sides there. Otherwise, the straps are very similar. As I say, you have the smooth side of the leather facing in. You still have that adjustment there with keyholes and studs, sort of mushroom studs that are used to adjust these in where they fit through the bales. But these are now plastic studs rather than metal, as you can see. And again, you have the roller buckle there, the strap coming through. And otherwise, it's very, very similar, of course. The actual suspension system, the way this fits and fits under the chin, is basically exactly the same. We do have some writing in the back of the liner here, which is not particularly clear. SU don't, possibly. I don't know exactly what that refers to, but I'll just mention it because it's there. And then we do have a date in this somewhere. 1 second, if I can find it again. It is in one side, I think. It's quite a faint stamp. There it is, just under the bale here. You can see the date there is not clear. 78, I think, but not particularly clear. They've actually stamped it twice. I don't know if the light's picking that up clearly. But yes, it's not very well stamped. The stamps on these are very often very shallow and unfortunately not always clear. One additional thing I'll mention with this is has the later example of the helmet net fitted. These nylon helmet nets were originally produced and just fitted under the rim and sort of had a draw cord to draw them in around the helmet. Later, they were modified, or a modified version was produced, which is basically made of the same material as the earlier examples, but has these little metal hooks which fit round the rim of the helmet, as you can see. And it's quite common to see the helmets worn with just this helmet net over the top. And it does certainly make it easy to fit these using these little metal hooks. And these were made in very large numbers. You can still buy them with the original packaging, the store's packaging. So certainly produced in large numbers and still extant and available in very large numbers. This one just happens to have it fitted from being in my collection. I think I actually put this on. I don't think it came with it, but I didn't see any reason to remove it for this video. We may well have a look at helmet covers and various helmet coverings and so forth going forward in more detail. Not the main topic of this video, but just thought I'd mention that here. This one does have the later example of a helmet net fitted with these little hooks, which I believe is potentially a late 70s thing. I'm not exactly sure when this second version of the helmet net was introduced, but certainly they're very common in the 1980s, and I believe possibly late 70s. If anyone can help with an exact date of introduction, I'd be interested to know. But that's a quick look at these two examples of the M56, an earlier example and a very much later example. And as I say, I'd be interested to find an M56-66 and an early M56 without those cheek pieces on the chin strap. Just tuck that strap out of the way there. Another quick comparison of these side by side. Of course, with that different liner in this one, the outside of the shell is completely smooth. There are no rivets. Another thing to mention here as well, one final thing to mention is there are actually plastic versions of these made as well for parade use, for guard duty and so forth. Just an interesting little detail. Obviously a lot lighter weight, but they maintain the look of wearing a steel helmet, which of course was the parade uniform headdress of the German army, and certainly that tradition goes back a long way. But just something to note here, not something we're going to look at. I don't have one, perhaps another thing I need to add to the collection in the future, but they did exist, a plastic version of these as well. So I do hope you found it interesting looking at these. As I say, hopefully useful for aspiring collectors to see an earlier and a later example. As I say, there are design differences from what we have here and the very earliest examples of these. But for the era I'm interested in, I have these two helmets which cover that era, and that's fine for me. That works for my collecting purposes and sort of reenacting purposes as far as the East German kit is concerned. But as I say, there's a lot more information available online if you want to learn more about these and more about the development history and so forth. Do have a good scout around. There are several good web pages and articles and so forth dealing with these helmets, which are worth reading. If you've enjoyed my video, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.